I'm Robert Joseph, and welcome to another installment of Grand Design's Breaking Barriers, Building Bridges. During this episode, we will explore the role of African Americans in classical music and opera, and some of the individual singers who were forced to endure racism behind the scene and on stage, but became celebrated in the musical genre unfriendly towards African Americans. African American musical traditions have evolved since arriving on American shores in 1619, blending with or giving rise to songs and dance in the Western world. However, it is more difficult to interpret any relationship African Americans have with classical music traditions. Well-known African American singers from William Warfield to Jesse Norman, from Marion Anderson to Leotown Price, have made history in the exclusive world of opera. Opportunities for African Americans in opera were limited due to overt and covert segregation. African Americans have always been creative out of necessity. This creativity has shown to be an advantage when companies like Opera Ebony, Harlem Opera Theater, and Opera Noir of New York were formed, giving African American artists opportunities and training in opera. Joining us for this installment of Breaking Barriers, Building Bridges is Deidre Walker, who will share her gift and natural talent as a classical singer. We will also hear from Christiana Maldonado, who will talk about her influences as a classically trained singer. Let's take a look.
My background, it really started when I was 6 years old with a teacher in elementary school. She noticed my talent and she asked me to ask my parents if I would sing Born Free on a local TV station. Well, that kind of started it all, but my greatest influence are really my parents, my mom and my dad. Both my mom and dad are singers, as well as my entire extended family. We are all musicians in our own right. I did grow up listening to Jesse Norman, and I did grow up listening. My parents bought me an album, Leotown Price album as well. And then I just went on to Tuskegee University and continued to sing. So I am a lover of all kinds of music. So I'm really flattered that you put me in the genre of opera, but what I really do see is that I have a vocal talent and I love to express my talent via written word, via emotions and feelings. I feel like it is still a very viable art form, and I believe that any musician that feels like that they want to explore opera, they should explore opera. And I also believe that most musicians really respect all genres of music, whether it's country, jazz, pop, R&B, gospel. So whether you're young or old, I really think that you should explore that, opera or classical music or whatever it is that you really like.
The sky shall unfold, preparing his entrance. The stars shall applaud him with thunders of praise. The sweet light in his eyes shall enhance those awaiting, and we shall behold him then face to face. face, our Savior and Lord. The angel shall sound the shout of his coming. The sleeping shall rise from their slumbering place, and those who remain.
I somewhat do consider myself a classical trained artist because at the same time, this is natural, this is what God has given me. But what I do recognize is that whatever talent he gives you, you should also expand on it. I have taken vocal lessons. I have had the opportunity to learn a couple of arias as well. But I love me some good down home gospel on a Sunday morning or any other day of the week as well. So, and I love pop and all of music. So I can really consider myself a musician, and I can respect all genres of music. I can respect anyone that has the ability to play an instrument. Given this is a hobby for me. So because it is a hobby, I have to make sure that I create space and time in order for me to perform, whether it's gospel and or classical. The classical, you have to make sure that you put the time and energy and effort into it to be prepared. Whether it's gospel, you've got to put the time and energy and effort into it. Whether it's jazz or pop, musicians put a lot of time and energy and effort into their craft to make sure that whatever they are presenting, it is of the best quality and representation of the art form that they are representing. How do we pass that on to the young people? I think it really has to do with exposure. So when artists come into the city, I think it's important that parents and musicians, other teachers, or just their entire village take the time to ensure that they attend these events. The Colorado Symphony just recently sponsored a concert with Cynthia Enrivo here. That was earlier part of this year. She was extraordinary, and there were young people in the audience. Les Odom from Hamilton, he has been here. There were young people in the audience. So exposure is really very important, and taking the time to teach young people so that they have some idea of what the art form is, and that they're not just hearing the general everyday music on the radio station that they're listening to or whatever they might be streaming today, because they may not want to take that extra step to say, oh, that's classical. Oh, that's a jazz musician. That person plays the saxophone. So we should expose our kids to as much as we can to give them those opportunities. The impact that I really want to have is to ensure that when I'm performing, wherever I am, that I'm doing my very best. That I am respectful of those that are listening, that I'm respectful of those that have asked me to sing. So I want to ensure that I have practiced, that I'm prepared. My last thoughts would be to get educated on the topic that you are studying and be the best at whatever that topic is, and to ensure that you are disciplined and that no one stops the dream that you have.
Well, my name is Christiana Dinay, and I'm originally from Boston, Massachusetts. I grew up in an inner city community, and opera was not something that we sort of saw on TV or our friends did or anything like this. So I was really involved in just becoming an R&B pop star, maybe a jazz singer, something like this. I grew up singing in church. So we sang a lot of spirituals, a lot of hymns, but never was I thinking about classical music. Really, that wasn't I didn't even know that was a genre. It wasn't until I went to high school and I went to a performing arts school in Boston, and I had the decision to either study a jazz track or a classical track. And because I was studying part-time at Berklee College of Music, doing their after-school kind of preparatory program, I decided I'll do the classical thing, since at Berklee I'm doing more contemporary jazz sorts of things. So I decided to study a bit there at my high school, totally not knowing what I was doing. It was quite a mess. But then I went to my college. I went to Gordon College, which is also in Massachusetts. And I did my audition in a totally, I guess, singing all the incorrect things for my voice, because I just really didn't know much about classical music. And I also didn't know that the school I was applying for, the college that I was going to, only had classical music. So it was a little bit on accident that I approached classical music. And it wasn't really until my junior year where I decided, yeah, I want to do this. And that was something that came after watching a VHS tape of Kathleen Battle and Jesse Norman, their spirituals in concert at Carnegie Hall, of course, with James Levine conducting, with the whole choir behind them in an amazing symphony. It was just amazing. Seeing that kind of solidified, like, yeah, I want to do this, and I think I might be able to do this. So after I went to college for voice performance, then I did my master's here in Colorado at the University of Denver Lamont School of Music, and I'm just gonna keep going to see how good we could get. My greatest influence, I would probably say, is Kathleen Battle. I first heard her, as I said, with the Spirituals concert, Spirituals in Concert recording, which was actually recorded and debuted and premiered in 1991, which is the year I was born. So it's quite interesting that sort of recording had such an impact on me, seeing how she just floats these amazing high notes and just moves around her voice with such ease and such power that both her and Jesse Norman had. Those were definitely my biggest influences.
Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh, hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do?
So yeah, there are so many legendary Black singers that I pull from, just in knowing that I kind of share that ancestry with them is just so amazing. People like Leontine Price and Jesse Norman and Kathleen Battle. There's so many. But I would definitely say that there's a real power and a real strength that comes from the African American community, from the Black community. Marion Anderson, another amazing woman of color, totally revolutionized how we look at music. Not only was she the first to be at the Metropolitan Opera as a Black woman singing one of the lead roles in Un ballo in maschera by Verdi. She also has, of course, this wonderful story of being denied to sing in Constitution Hall, I believe 1939, by the Daughters of the Revolution, saying, no, this woman of color cannot premiere here. There's no way that this is possible. And even in this time, and other singers as well, having to enter through a back door and not being given the real respect for the talent that they have. So back to that story, it was Eleanor Roosevelt and her husband, of course, the President Roosevelt, signing the kind of agreement to say, no, she will perform. And not only will she perform at the site of the Lincoln Memorial, where over 75,000 people were able to listen to her live, not including the millions of people that were probably listening via radio. So she has created a way for me to be here, yes, absolutely. I'm white. My dad is from here, from America. My mom is originally from Jamaica. Her whole family immigrated here. There's a sense of, yes, I'm a white opera singer, but I don't feel that I get to say that, and not necessarily that I want to say that, because it's been very clear to me in productions, in friendship circles, in these sorts of things where, yeah, I'm not white enough to be in these circles or accepted as just a normal opera singer. There's always something, well, what do you really want to do? There's something always kind of like hidden. But then at the same time, I'm sensitive to the fact that, yes, I identify as a person of color, but I don't face the same challenges that someone who appears slightly darker than I would have. I know lots of singers have been talking about, especially now, kind of coming out and saying, one, that colorism is definitely a problem within the music industry, within the opera industry for sure. We see this in the fact that many tenors that are Black or darker skinned don't get the same opportunity as a lead role as their white counterparts, because the audience is not really ready maybe to see a Black man in pursuit of a white woman, a soprano, and then they fall in love and everything's okay. I've heard a lot that the audience is not ready for that, so we don't see that so much on the stage. But I really still deal with a lot of those maybe problems, and I don't want to equate how Black you are to how bad your struggle is either, because that's not what being Black is to me. But I definitely identify as a person of color, and in that have really faced a lot of pushback in this particular industry that sometimes can be seen as white, upper class, kind of maybe even older generation. And sometimes people say, well, why are you doing this? So in being an emerging opera singer, one of the things that we have to do is to kind of create like a booklet almost of arias that we can sing at any time for any audition. And one of those is, for me, that I've selected with my teacher and with the help of some coaches and other people, is Summertime from Porgy and Bess. And Summertime is just a timeless song. You know, it's originally an aria from this opera, but it's been turned into a jazz standard and can be seen in many different ways. It is just timeless and beautiful, absolutely, for sure. However, Porgy and Bess is kind of set in this imaginary town of Catfish Row, and so in the South, and so the idea might be that everybody is Black. And that's actually something that George Gershwin has said, that anyone that's going to sing any of these lead roles needs to be a person of color, so that we get away from things like blackface and these very offensive things that happen. So I really struggled to wonder, should I sing Summertime? Because I don't want to appropriate the role at all, and to say that someone that looks like me maybe shouldn't sing this role. But I have received a lot of positive feedback in that I've kind of been able to claim my identity and who I am as a person of color, and that I do have a right to this music. But yeah, I'm very sensitive to where I lie and what is available to me versus someone else.
living is easy. Fish are jumping, and the cotton is high.
These sorts of shows, productions, operas, or plays, or whatever, whichever genre we're looking at them, the stories are just so timeless and really are kind of with us today. The struggle of Porgy and Bess, Bess being someone that just really wants to get it right, but is having such a hard time doing that, and the maybe oppressive and wrong things that pull her back into being who she fully can be. These sorts of things are just with us all the time. And it's so affirming for us to see people of color on stage. Representation is so critical for where we are right now. Shamefully, we didn't do that to begin with at the start of this country. But it's really been formative for people like me to see people that look like us on stage, knowing that, you know, if you're from the inner city, you don't just have to be a basketball player, you don't just have to be a rapper, you can be an opera singer. You know, there's so many things that are available to us still. I think the passion that I have for this comes from, I would really give honor to my grandparents for the passion that I currently have to go after opera. That does not mean that my grandmother or my grandfather on either side were opera singers. They were just passionate about what they had to do. For example, my grandmother that immigrated here from Jamaica with her family, she came before all of her children, and my grandfather, she had 8 children with my grandfather. So she came here, I think about a year before, she came to America about a year before everyone else came, to kind of save enough money, get established, get somewhere to live, to send that back and then get everyone here. That's kind of like stick-to-itiveness, that determination, that even when the odds are against you, you can still succeed. I think it's just in my blood. And I don't really know any difference. And also, I grew up, as I mentioned, in the church. And my dad is a pastor. He's been a minister my whole life. So him and my mom are very involved in the faith. And that's also something that, you know, of course, the main thing that I really rely on is that I know, because this was not shown to me, this is not a gift that I gave myself. This is not the role that I was set out in my mind to do, because I was ready to be the next Alicia Keys. You know, I'm like, she's biracial, I'm biracial, we could do our hair the same way, okay, we're, you know, kind of seeing myself in that. And then all of a sudden I'm opened up to this whole other realm of classical music, and I'm like, well, I love Alicia Keys, but this is something that I can do, and it's working, and my voice is just there for it. I didn't do that. You know, of course I worked hard all throughout school, practicing. I still practice. I still have a teacher. I meet with her weekly. You know, there's work that goes into this for sure. But there's something else that allows me to do this and do it well. And I really do believe it's my faith. One of the main things that I want to share in my story as I become a classical singer and really take that, I really want other people, emerging singers, younger people than I, to really know that they can do anything and that anything is possible. I truly, truly did not know that classical music was a thing. And I just didn't know. I wasn't exposed to this. I didn't see anybody that looked like me even when I started doing this. So I just really want my story of finding this thing and being able to be successful at it to show other people that are coming behind me that, yeah, really, or even people that are my peers. There's nothing that is impossible if you just believe and work really, really hard. Yeah.
Discussing race in the classical world is highly emotional and can destroy one's career. Creative theft of music by African Americans has been all too common. There are artists such as Marion Anderson who have certainly broken barriers, endured overt or even subtle racism, and have been ostracized and still have achieved acclaim in their opera career. Oftentimes, in order to break the barrier of institutionalized racism, support is needed. This concludes our installment of Breaking Barriers, Building Bridges, the role of African Americans in classical music and opera. Please remember to tune in again as we continue the series, A Journey of Your History, Heritage, Culture, and Triumphs. Thank you for watching, and a special thanks to our guests, Deidre Walker and Christiana Maldonado, for being a part of this episode. Whatever you do, don't stop the music.